just before we move on, who here are counsellors? Who here are administrators? And then we've got other people who are just coming in because they're random off the street. So that's great.
Usually sit. Have you stood during lunch?
There was one lady who was wanting to have a nap, so but that's okay. You're welcome to take those 4 seats at the back. So that you're ready for your presentation next. So the point we're trying to make today is that there's a ton of data, and in both of our schools, previously, we've had all sorts of places to store this data. And we're not saying that's good or bad. From a counselling perspective, when I first went to the Ambani school, there were cupboards full of folders, and there were drawers full of SAT scores and ACT scores and all sorts of data that's there. But it wasn't usable because it was all in different places. I know Tiffany at the Oberoi school has been using data or collecting data she would have her spreadsheet with certain amounts of data. One of the other counsellors would have their set of data. And so they would have some spreadsheets maybe
that were shared. Like we did have shared, so we were collecting similar data. But they were all just, the only people that could access them were the 3 of us, the 3 counselors in our office. And every year we would make a new spreadsheet and it would tweak slightly. So it's not like you could always sort of compare the data because it always looked slightly different depending on who made the spreadsheet.
Now, we're not talking in this presentation today about reports as such, because reports are just one way of presenting data, whether it's a report, whether it's a scattergram, whether it's a graph, whether it's a poster, whatever else. We're not necessarily talking about how to present the data. We want to talk about a little bit about how you can use different pieces of data for different purposes. And we're looking at it from 3 different perspectives. We've got a mum here. Surprisingly, her daughter has just graduated from the Ambani school and has headed off to a US college. And so she's spent the last couple of years, even as the counsellor, being a mum and watching her son and daughter. Her son is in grade 11, her daughter has gone to university, using data in all sorts of ways to help them in their journey to college. Tiffany is going to be talking from a counsellor's point of view, and how the same pieces of data may be used in her role as a counsellor, and then I'm going to be talking about the similar pieces of data or the types of data that I use in my, not necessarily everyday life, but in quite often from an administrator's perspective, so that we can see that how all of us should be working as a team to make sure that we've got data that's accessible, usable, and at our fingertips so we can do something with it. So, we brainstormed the other day and we thought, what sort of data? Please, you don't need to take any notes. We can send this whole presentation to you, and we've also got some other notes that we can send about this as well. So if you need anything, you're more than welcome to have all of what we've got. So we did some brainstorming the other day. We thought about all the pieces of data that we used to keep in cupboards. We used to keep in in this spreadsheet, or we'd have it on this file. And so if you wanted to do something, create a school profile, or speak to your administrators because they're wanting to do their presentation, or update the school website. You had to go looking for all of those things. And these are the type of data that we looked at: GPAs, task lists, the gender of people, where people are from, deferral lists, wait lists, whatever. Tons and tons of data. And so please, we kept this one for you. Okay, and come on down. You get the prize later on, and here it is. Okay? Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. And so, these are all the different data points, and I'm sure there's probably more, but from our perspectives, this is the data that we would use generally. Please, if you want to come, we'll scare her away. All right, so next one. So, as I said before, different data for different uses by different stakeholders, but it's the same data. And if I'm saying to Tiffany, I'm going to do a write-up because who does the HPC survey here? Is it the Times Education Survey? And there's another one that's just come out at the moment. Oh my gosh, all of these are Indian surveys that come out and we have to write them up.
And they're due like 3 days later. I mean, by the time I get them, they're like, can you get this to us tomorrow? And you're like, find the spreadsheet.
And so for us, being able to access that data from an administration point of view is super easy because now we've got it somewhere. Remember, we're not talking the C word or the B word or the U word, but we use a platform to help us keep all these things together. But from a parent's point of view, I'll swap places with you, Nitika.
So, like Maggie said, I'm a recent parent who's just dropped her daughter off to university. The past couple of years, it's these data points that helped us to decipher what the universities on her list should be. So things like acceptances from our school, historically looking at the data that we have from the past 15 years, which schools did students of a similar profile apply to, where they get accepted, and when they finally attend. That was one of the most important data points that we could use to decipher which university should go on her list.
Can I interrupt? Please, come down. You get a prize as well. Thank you for coming down. It's great. And please, come. We've got a place for you too. Thank you very much.
Coming late.
Sorry? This is not encouraging you to come late. Yeah.
Another one that helped right afterwards, if it's a student, I tend to spill over as a counselor and say student, or as a parent, my child, if she got deferred or waitlisted, what were the chances of her getting accepted after that? And in some cases it's nil. With some universities, it's 10%, with some it can be 80%. It's only these data points that can help you to decide, should I even wait for that waitlist to come through, or should I put my deposit down at a particular university before that? The others, of course, were very important, were scholarships. It's important for most people across the board. Even if you're not applying for financial aid, if you see past data that gives you scholarships in universities, you're going to look at those schools a little bit more favorably. Of course, it matters to us what the college name is, what the region is, how many students from our school are attending, because then that gives you a background on maybe the happiness quotient. It was a little bit of a tough decision for us to take for the university that she chose, because in the past 15 years we've probably had maybe 20 applications go to this university and only 5 or 6 really convert. So these are the things that you keep on your radar before you make a decision about a particular university. Once the process was underway as a parent, what I wanted to know was, okay, we're doing everything that's required from our side. The students writing our essays, we're submitting maybe financial documents, submitting the application. Has everything happened from the school's perspective? Has the school sent out the recommendations in time? Has the school sent out, let's say, transcripts on time? It's only when all these aspects finally go and meet in the university is your deadline met. So it was important for us to see that these recommendations were requested, the teachers had submitted them, and finally the counselor had submitted it to the universities, because then that marked the end of the process from our side. One of the other things that plays a very important role while finding the right match is scores. In our case, we do the IB. So the IB or the PSAT or the pre-ACT that a student may have taken in the 10th grade, going on to the SATs or the ACTs, and the correlation between these grades. Looking at that correlation, does my daughter fit into that range so that she can apply to this particular school? Does she meet the minimum or the middle range so that again it can feature as one of the schools that we allow 12 universities in our school? Does it fit into, let's say, a dream school or a reach school or a backup school? So it's these ranges that were able to tell me that before I put a school, or rather she put a school on her list. And one of the other things was choosing the plan to apply. Did students from the past with her profile make it to an early decision or an early action plan, or did they have to wait and apply regular to that particular school? And finally, one of the other things that we use very actively is alumni information. When you're 10, 12 and 15 years old, you had students go to almost all parts of the world. So when you have students now applying in the 11th and 12th grade, it's the contact details of where all the past students and alumni have applied, where they've gotten in, where did they finally go, why did they not take any other university over the one that they went to, etc. So that's another data point that we used as parents to create that final list.
So the point we're trying to make is keep as much data as possible. Keep it from years previously. At the Oberoi school at the moment, we have 11 years of documentation. It's not all perfect, but every piece of information we've got it in one place. Ambani school, 15 years. And the more that you can store data, the more that you can keep on getting those pieces of data, whether it's for a school, whether it's from an independent counsellor's point of view, having that storage capacity allows you to do stuff with the data. All right, so we're going to move on from parents and students, and we're going to be looking at the counselling side of things.
So a lot of what we do is we try to get kids empowered so that they can kind of guide this process. So in no way, I'm looking at a lot of red tags out there, do I know everything? I'm hopefully just know where to point the kids so that they can get the information, right? So when they come to me and say, what about this university? It's not that I sit there and say, oh, you have a 47% chance of getting in, right? I mean, that's not my job. That's impossible. But what I do is I show them the data that we have from past applicants so that they can figure out what their chances are of getting in. And they can figure out whether or not this school is a reach school, a target school, or a likely school. And so that's a big part of what we do is we just train them so that they know where to get the information. And of course, part of that is looking to make sure that the information that we're giving them is working, right? So that's kind of where data comes in also. So this first one, obviously, is just a very simple, I think, basic idea of what counselors do. And this is, kids come to you and they want to know, what are my chances of getting in? And, for some systems, it's based on a score, right? So UK, India, you take an entrance exam, if you get above this, you're in. Some of them are very, very simple. So then that's fine. When it gets a little bit more complicated, of course, is when you're looking at the US system, because there's kind of this X factor that nobody knows what it is, right? Or if you're looking at the really competitive schools in the UK or whatever else, right? Because then they get so many applicants that meet the criteria, then there is an X factor. So some of the things that we look at our school, of course, are what kind of scores do you have? If they're younger students and they're starting out earlier, we'll look at PSATs or pre-ACTs. We'll look at SATs and ACTs if they've taken those. We look at which universities have accepted students of your profile. And again, this isn't a guarantee, right? Even a safety school isn't 100% chance of getting in. You have we just make up numbers, but I say 75% chance of getting in. And then the percent accepted. So we look at that. This past year, we sort of had an Anomaly Group, and they were, we had some problems because we had a few kids that really just kept putting in applications. And the thing about the US system is you can do that. Like once you upload your stuff into the Common App, you lose control over how many those kids send in. So I think we tell kids we don't have a cap, because we don't really think there's any way to enforce it, and it's just one less thing for me to fight about. But we asked them to kind of think about 8 to 10 universities. But we had a kid this year that did 35. And so, yeah.
It caused me great stress.
We had an entire meeting over this kid. Totally uncoachable, rogue, whatever you want, outlier, whatever. And honestly, we kept saying, what are you doing? Is this your parents? Do we need to pull your parents in? Whatever. But he just kept applying to schools that didn't have supplemental essays. He just kept putting them in there. I don't know if it was a competition. We have a TV screen that has acceptances on it at our high school. I don't know if he just wanted to see his name up there more often. Like, I don't know what it was. But yeah, so we think that was an outlier group, right? That we just sort of had this weird group last year. But we'll continue to track that, and if it changes, well then we might have to adjust our no cap policy. So that's one of the things that we look at. The second thing that we talked about is, what are the popular universities which can help or hurt students? We all have certain universities that for some reason take a lot of our students, like they just really like. They must have gotten a few of our kids and it worked really well, and so every year, they tend to take our kids. So there's certain kids that I will steer that way, because I know that might be their best option, is to go somewhere that they can ride on someone else's legacy. So we look at that a little bit, but then in other ways, sometimes we look at them and we say, listen, 25 of you guys are applying to this university. They're not gonna take 25 kids from Oberoi. They don't want a floor of you. So maybe you want to kind of diversify a little bit. So we do talk about that a little bit. There's times when we will say, okay, like this year I have 3 kids looking at film. And so one of the kids is like a go-getter. He's got his list together, like superstar. And the other 2 are kind of like, film. So I kind of look at his list and then say, hey, did you check out this university, to the other 2 kids? So I tend to sort of look at the data that way too. If you're looking at this one, here's another business school you should look at, or whatever else. If we need test prep, if the kids aren't really getting to the place where they want to be as far as, for us, we're an IB school, so sometimes we're worried a little bit about the IB scores not being strong enough if they're applying to, especially like UK universities. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then a big thing for us dealing with parents is scholarships, especially if you're talking about safety schools in the US. Nobody should be paying $70,000 for a safety school in my mind. Those are the first ones we cross off. So we sometimes will look and see which universities have given funding to students in that same profile. And we actually publish it. So we give it to the kids and the parents and say, listen, in the last 2 years, here's a list of the universities, here's how much money they gave students, and here's the profile of those kids, so that parents can actually use that as part of the strategy. I'd like to say kids are using it as part of their strategy, but I'm pretty sure they're not. This is a big one about how we evaluate how we're doing, right? So here we are giving all this advice and pointing kids in the direction, and we need to see, is it working? So when we're talking with kids and saying, hey, that's a target school, that's a safety school, that's a reach school, are we accurate or not? Or are we really missing the ball? You tend to know the same universities over and over again, but a big part of what I do is try to get kids to apply to other schools that kids aren't applying to. So they're not as familiar to me. So I'm kind of benchmarking sometimes and just kind of saying, I think that's a target school. So then I need to follow up and make sure I'm giving the right advice. This one is more about when I'm meeting with universities. So, we all have tons of universities visit. I think India is quite popular right now. I was talking to somebody yesterday saying that some of the universities actually have taken their China budget and moved it over to India, especially like the Canadian universities, because they're having trouble getting into China. So I think we're seeing more and more universities coming through. And so this is kind of good for me. Before a university comes and visits, I can check and see, are they accepting our kids? If they're not accepting our kids, why are they accepting our kids? Do they not understand what we do in this building? If they're getting scholarships, maybe we give them a candy, we're trying to encourage this, right? And if they're not giving scholarships, well then let's talk about how much a scholarship would help us get that first kid to go to your university. So I think that can be really helpful, looking at wait lists and defers and how universities react to that. This is just a quick one. We check to make sure that teachers are submitting rec letters on time. Usually we have one teacher every year. I finally got rid of the one last year, and I can see we got a new one, who doesn't hand in the rec letters. I gotta chase them around. And you're sitting there trying to tell a kid, like, maybe ask her for the letter. But yeah, I'm not saying anything bad, but maybe you could ask someone else. And then you feel like you're sort of, like giving candy to the people that came late. Like if you don't hand in your rec letters on time, then we won't ask you anymore. So I feel like that's not really fair either. And then This is a big one for us because, you know, you want teachers happy when they're writing these rec letters. You don't want them to feel overwhelmed. I want the kids to be able to ask which teachers they think are going to give the best letters. So we have some teachers that write, you know, 25 letters. The expats tend to complain. The Indian teachers are lovely about it at our school, I have to say, and they're the ones that usually get slammed. But you know, if I know that a teacher is writing 25 rec letters, then I'll reach out, I'll ask if I can cover a class, hopefully a test, because I don't want to teach anything. But you know, if I can just kind of do that and they can have an hour to write the rec letter, you know, then it's good, I think, for relationships, and normally they don't take you up on it, but they're thrilled that you offered, you know, which is, it's good for morale. This is one, so if you do use a platform, then of course you want to see if the kids are using it and whether or not and if they're not using it, why aren't they using it? We tend to hold our platform when we use Naviance and then Now Alpha, we tend to hold it hostage. So we put everything on there, we force them to use it. So anytime they ask us a question, we're always like, it's right here in Alpha, like, so you have to go in there. So we're always looking to see if kids are logging in. If they're not logging in, why aren't they logging in? We're not parent driven. We tend to try to get our parents out of our office, so we don't really care about how often they're logging in, but the kids is who we really focus on. And then finally is alums. So we're I mean, Barry says 11 years, but we've only been graduating kids for a couple of years, and the first few years were very tiny cohorts. So it's only been the last 2 years where we've been kind of full. So we have a pretty young, small alumni base, and we're just setting it up as how we can use it. The first groups, I think, graduated the year before last, so they're just getting jobs. We're hoping internship possibilities for our students. But, you know, I'm, again, not an expert on every university, so we tend to say, you know, if you're thinking about going to the University of Toronto, here's the alums from last year, you know, write to them. Ask them what it's like, you know, ask them about Indian food, ask them, I mean, this is what you need to know. Right now, you know, Hong Kong, right? So our students are trying to figure out, should I be applying to Hong Kong or not? Well, I don't know. I mean, the pictures look pretty scary, but I mean, you know, the festival on Saturday looked pretty scary if you look at those pictures too. So, you know, whatever. So we put them in touch with the alums so that they can kind of get a better idea of what it's like for a young person. Because what my view of that country and someone who's living on the ground, it looks very, very different. So we tap the alums, and when they come back to visit, you know, we update the email addresses so that we have that information. We also run some alum sessions. So one of the things that we do is have alums come back and talk to the students. And then last year we actually had alums come back and talk to the parents, which was fantastic. So we need their emails so that we can invite them to those events. So yeah, I think that's.
So we collect data, and we have all this data, and you know, it's great if you've got it for 11, 15 years or whatever. But if you're just starting out, pulling all that data together and allowing it to be used by different stakeholders at different times. We're in a good position at both of these schools where the admin can use the data irrespective of what they're doing with the data. Because Tiffany, at my school, I want Tiffany and Manal and Catherine to get on with their job. I don't need to see them every day. I don't need to work out what they're doing. They need to just use this data however they see fit. But I also don't want to have to chase them for stuff. The last thing I want to do is go up and interrupt their talking with students to find bits and pieces. So for me, I'm using data for a different reason. And if you go to the next slide. So I will look at the data and I'll say, okay, we've got our ACT average or our PSAT average or whatever else it might be as a global. How does our students fit into, you know, if they're doing their IB exams, how do our students compare with other students using this one piece of data? It's not the only data we use, but it's another piece of data that we can throw into the mix when our heads of department, when our heads of division are looking at the academic side of things. You know, so these pieces of data, if I have access to them quickly and easily without having to go to speak to the counsellors, very, very usable. Next one. Again, well, from my perspective, I'm promoting and speaking to parents of nursery kids, trying to talk to them about, hey, this is a great school to come. We've got $8 million worth of scholarships last year. We've got $7 million the year before. People are making decisions about their kids from nursery whether our school has got the potential to get them to where they want to be. So having easy access for me as an administrator with this information allows me to do that publicity side of things. Where at my school, we have a communications and HR team that uses this data regularly, whether it's in banners, whether it's in promotions, whether it's in our website. We can get this very, very easily. Next one. We can also, we may be looking at breaking up further. If you go with, I think it's the next one. No, go back, it's all right. If you break up the SAT and the ACT into its individual components, we can look at that information with our math department, with our English department, and look at how we can enhance our academic offerings so that we can increase those scores so that our kids have a greater chance of being successful later on. Next one. The attending university, again, it's in our publications. We have big banners saying, so because again, I'm not dealing with the grade 12s. I'm not dealing with the parents on a day-to-day basis talking about these things. I've got the grade 1s, grade 1 parents who are trying to decide whether the Oberoi school is the school they want to put their kids in. Oh my gosh, are they going to Harvard? Are they going to all over the globe? Our school, if I look at our historical records, in the top 3, let's say colleges to go to, one of the top 3 is a gap year, which is quite amazing because if you go to the Ambani school, very few kids at the Ambani school, heaven forbid, would take a gap year because they're ready to go and get on with their studies, and and everybody goes to Harvard at the Ambani school. And they do. And so, but the point is, parents from our school, knowing that information, are gosh, a lot of kids make that choice. This is a very different, I don't want to say model of school, but the culture of the Oberoi school, of this school compared to that school, is different. And so the people who would want their kids in this school are different to the ones who want this sort of experience. So that information is very, very useful for an administrator. Keep going, next one. Again, we have lots of things we might be sending. We're in the midst of, I don't know whether anybody else here is in the midst of CIS accreditation and NEASC accreditation, and we have to send out bits and pieces. I don't want to have to speak to, I don't want to speak to the college counselling department to get alumni information. We want to be able to access that information quickly and easily and be able to send that information out. And that takes us to...
So really this is a way to get your administrators out of your office.
It's like, why are you here? Why are you here? You've got the information, go downstairs, go back where you belong. Now, keep away from us.
Now I told you.
Yeah. So next please. And when it comes to a usage report, if you can find out a way, we're investing money in these guys. Not only are we hiring these guys and giving them no class time because they don't want to teach anything, but we're also investing, at our school, we're investing in a platform that allows us to store our stuff. But being able to find out from the students and parents and the counsellors how much they're actually using it allows us to make sure that the investment in a platform, whichever platform suits your needs, actually works. The investment is a good investment. So this sort of data on a yearly or 6-monthly or monthly basis is a great thing for us. And a lot of this information is conversation starters. If you listen to what Tiffany was saying before and what Nitika was talking about, from a parent's perspective, it'll give them a place to ask questions. It gives the counsellor lots of avenues to talk to kids about and empowering them to make wise decisions.
The numbers are kind of nice, I think, sometimes because it's not personal. So it's...
Then when it is accessible, how can you then get it out again? As I said before, it's like, oh my gosh, trying to find alumni emails. I've got to speak to Manal, but what happens if Manal leaves our school and goes to the Ambani school and she takes all our contacts with her? Where is all this information? We were talking about, one of the things that we're talking about the other day is recommendations. And I was saying to Tiffany, because I'm only new at our school, where are all our recommendations? Oh, we have them on a drive, we have them on this drive, and we have them in this, and it's like, well, is that, and the question is that I've been throwing at their department, is that the best place for them? And is there better places to store these pieces of data, whether it's recommendations, whether it's your transcripts, whether it's all of that other information, this historical records, 11 years of data, 15 years of data, 5 years of data is great data. But if it's not accessible, it's of no use to you. If you can click a button and get that information so that you can manipulate that information, those conversations can happen. And that's the exciting thing. So for us, we're not saying that everybody must have a platform, whether it's the C platform, the U platform, or the B platform. Okay, we're not saying that, but from our perspective, and we've got Annie down the back here as well, who has the M platform. From all of our perspectives, a platform is essential because it allows the different stakeholders to have easy access to all of this information. And then when you have that information, well then, depending on the platform, will depend on how you can get it back out again. Now, for us, all of those slides up on there is a different report from our platform. We can say, okay, we want that, boom, click of a button. We want those bits of information, boom, click of a button. And Tiffany can use it the way she wants. She can get, Tiffany was, when I first got there, it's like, look at spreadsheets. And it's like, well, now you've got spreadsheets.
Now you have that.
They're color coded, you can organize the data in a certain way, like, yeah, they're beautiful spreadsheets.
Yeah. so
Caused some attention, that's my whole reading.
But we're getting there. Yeah, we do have counselling and it's all like couples therapy. But one of the things that I'm really, and from an administrator's point of view, I'm really trying to support our counsellors. And so put your hand up if you're an administrator in here. Okay, yay. I'm speaking directly to you guys, okay? Really directly to administrators. We want counsellors to be front-facing, working with these people, the parents, and the students. That's all I want them to be doing. The other stuff, we as the administrators need to support them. And so what I'm saying to our counsellors is, you do this stuff, and then maybe not me personally, but as an administrator, I will do the rest. And so this is a team approach. This is us working collaboratively to make sure that the information is there for all of us to use in our own way. So counsellors, I'm expecting our counselling team and this was the same when we were at the Ambani school as well. The counselling team looked after this information because this is the information that they put into wherever it is. You store this information. Applications, predictions, admissions decisions, where people go, scholarships that you get, any notes from colleges. That's your job because that's the stuff that you gather every day. But from our point of view, and from an administration point of view, this is the stuff that somebody else is responsible for. Now, at the Ambani school, we have...
just came up.
Sorry?
A lot of cameras just came up. They were like, school administration.
At the Ambani school, we have this fabulous resource called Michelle. Now, Michelle, if you can buy Michelle, if she worth her weight in gold.
Michelle is our assistant.
Sorry? Yeah. And if Michelle goes to the American school or goes and starts working for Yogesh or something or other, there's going to be trouble because Michelle is the counselling department secretary, office assistant, boss, administrative assistant.
Let's admit it.
Yeah,
She was our
exactly.
boss.
So the good thing about having somebody like Michelle is that she was responsible for all of this stuff. SATs come, boom. It's not up to the counsellor. If the counsellor's having to do that stuff, it takes her away from talking to kids and talking to parents. If they're having to fix up phone numbers in the demographics, if they're having to put in subject test results, school results, GPAs, if you're having to keep that data where we all can use it, well then it's taking you away from front-facing stuff. And so I dedicate, or I make the commitment that that stuff's not going to be done by them. And so every now and then, Tiffany comes down to my office and she does it like this. And she throws stuff, and here's like another ACT piece of paper. Now, at my school, we don't have a Michelle, but we do have a Gail. And so Gail's taking the place.
She's in training.
Yeah, so she's I don't quite know how to get her to a Michelle, but I'm the deputy head of the school, and there's the head of the school. Well, Gail is the head of school secretary. But you know, if you ever meet Neil, you'll understand how little Gail does, because Neil just sort of does his own stuff. And so it's like, okay, let's use Gail. And so from an administrative point of view, I'm making sure that this stuff is done behind the scenes. And that allows us as a team, parents, students, counsellors and school, to have everything in one place. Now, and we can go about doing our jobs the best way possible. We use a platform. Every spreadsheet that we need, we can withdraw from our platform. And so from our perspectives, we would urge administrators to get your counsellors to speak with these those B's and U's and M's and C's, and see if any of those platforms meet your need. They're not expensive. They're worth. They're not exorbitant. Yes, they cost. There is a cost factor to them, but the accessibility of data, the accessibility to be able to get the information out at your fingertips is huge.
And manipulate the data, which is something I will admit my spreadsheets couldn't do, right? Because you can manipulate this data in these platforms. And
It's
if you
consistent.
can't,
When you talk about this, and it really comes down to us making sure that we keep on inputting that data. And as we were at a session yesterday, and one of the things that at both of these schools, we invested a whole lot of time in getting any data that we had, any previous data, historical data, into the platform we chose. Everything is in there now. When I first got to the Ambani school, we took us about 4 months of dedicated, okay, you're looking after the SATs for the last 11 years. You're looking after the ACTs. Annie was doing something else. And we were just sitting in, inputting data. Michelle was working at it. And so as a team, we got any piece of data we could find in any of the cupboards to put in there, because the more data you have, the more historical data that you have,
More informed decisions you can make.
exactly, the more you can do. And so I would encourage administrators to look at the platforms that are available, see which ones meet your needs, look for platforms that, number one, can allow you to store lots of data that we get, but the second thing is to be able to get it out. Ask about reports. What reports are available? What ways can you bring the information back out again so that different stakeholders can use that information? Please. That's where we're at with regards to our data. No graphs, we've done pretty well. No graphs, no correlations. And
No one's asleep. I
Not
saw
yet,
somebody
not yet,
yawning a
not
little
yet.
bit there, but she woke up.
So, any questions? Any questions at all about any of this, what we've been talking about, platforms that we've used? Anybody got any suggestions? Otherwise, yes?
So
Ms.
which are the
Tingler?
platform you're using, A, B, C, and whichever?
Yeah.
Which is the one you are using and you found?
We're using C. We're using C.
And he's sitting next to you.
Yeah. We used to.
You're actually sandwiched.
Yeah.
Yeah, sandwiched
we-
between two C's.
We used to use Naviance. We were, but at both schools, Naviance wasn't well used. Whereas, it was used, but not much.
We liked the rep.
Yeah.
I liked the rep,
Yeah.
but I hated not.
But we don't have Navians available.
No, so
now.
Naviance
Yes, yes,
disappeared.
It is shut
And so
down.
what happened then is that there are other platforms that have developed since then, or have started to promote their product. And so now we have there were about 5 a few years ago. I think we've got the 3 that are here are probably the main players. Maya Learning is one that Annie uses at her school. There's Maya Learning, there's Unifrogs here, there's Bridge U's here, ANSI Alpha is here, but Maya Learning is not at this conference. But they're probably the 4 main players that you would look at and say, okay. And my advice is when you talk to the people. Where can I store data? What data can I store? How can I get it back out again? How can I use that data? Or how can the different stakeholders in my school use the data? And I would think that, that whether you're a school or an independent counsellor in that field, you'd be asking the same questions, because the same information, if you're an independent, I'm saying that because I know there's some independent counsellors here, but they're having the same discussions. And with their parents, you know, they've got kids who are there, they're trying to make accurate decisions, and they can use that with their information. And sometimes these platforms are also, it's interesting, some of these platforms
are very dynamic.
but they also use, so if this school has very little data, okay, let's say this is their first year, they've got a platform, but they don't have many historical records, and they're just getting started. Now, some platforms, they will use the information from anybody who uses the platform. So if these people are all using X platform, this person here who's just starting as a new counsellor or a new school can use the data for some of this stuff based on all the users of the platform. Does that make sense? So if they're trying to compare their chances of getting into a university,
and you only have 2 kids that applied to that university, you don't have enough data points to even make a prediction, right?
But
But
they
you
can-
can look at globally
Yeah.
a bunch of kids that applied to that
That-
university.
that are using
right?
that
It's not
platform.
your kids, that would be preferable, but
So you either use
Plan
your
B.
own school's historical data, or you use the global data that
And
any
you
platform.
can have country-wise.
Yes, these platforms you work with
Sorry?
give you access to such data.
you speak to the platform people.
Yeah.
can
and you
I
talk to
say
them.
though,
Yeah.
so when we were having this conversation, I didn't really even know what questions to ask, because I'm not very data driven. I am now, because my boss is so I really didn't even know what questions to ask. So if you're sitting there thinking, I don't even know where to start, there's a spreadsheet that I can share with you. And what it does is it goes through the different platforms and compares them. So it says, you know, where are they located? You know, do they allow teacher recs to be uploaded? Do you work with Parchment? Do they whatever? And it goes through the big players. So if you want me to, I can share that document with you. You just email me, and you can. I mean, it's something that, you know, I think one of the counselors went through and started plugging it in, and it was really helpful for me because I didn't even know what questions to ask. Who put that in there? Yeah, by emailing me.
Yes,
Put
ma'am.
my
We had a
email wrong.
discussion about how students did not want to use a particular portal, or how it was not very famous with the students. So we also face this challenge, students not wanting to use the portal although we have.
Yep.
So how do you all encourage them? How do you all put them on the portal?
So we-
Just saying everything is available on the portal.
Yes.
Sometimes is not enough.
Them back to it, and then in grade 11, we store all of our documents on there. So, you know, if kids want to know how do I write a CV, they have to go through that. So we just keep pointing them that way. And I mean, it's hard for the 11 and 12s when we started because they were used to using ManageBack or whatever else. But little by little, we're trying to get more and more of our stuff. University visits are on there. You know, I mean, so I think that's the way, I mean, honestly, so that we want them so that when they think uni counseling, they think of the platform.
So
Like, that's
basically
what we
pushing
want.
them towards the platform again and again, and when they think the time is right, they will.
But a lot of it
They
needs to
want
be
the
subtle.
info.
Subtle. You don't have to even, like, if any communication, if any information, any
Has to be through the
parenting,
portal.
you say, go to here, go to here, go to here, and they're thinking, well, oh, I've got to go to here. You're not having to say, you're not saying, you must use it. No, you don't have to use it if you don't want to, but the information is there.
Yes, but
and
if
so-
you don't use it, you're not
Force
getting
it
the
on them.
information that I
But
have.
how to motivate them?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you
that's
have
my
to
motivation.
believe in it. If you don't believe in the platform, and that was one of the things, and I think all of us faced when we used to use Naviance, and I know whether it's the same with other people in here. Naviance was great, but it was so big, it was so robust, and a lot of people just like, okay, we'll just store this stuff and then not really touch it. So people didn't believe in it.
And it was
But-
ugly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was done.
Yeah,
It was ugly. It looked like 1990.
but you have to buy into it, and you've got to get in there and get your feet dirty and really, you know, make sure that, you know, start wearing the, don't wear the t-shirts. Any other questions?
One question.
Yes, please, sir. And then you.
How many students does a guidance counselor take care of? Given the number also, right?
So I have 40 kids per grade level.
Do you teach as well?
No,
I'm a guidance counselor.
This is
have
all I do.
20 lessons a week.
yeah, so you should have yours.
Possible?
Where's
So you
your-
should
Why don't you
have-
come to
Where's
my-
your
Yeah,
administrator?
You should have
My principal, I'm going to come when I become to school.
So I work with
invite you and
40
give a talk there.
Yeah.
No problem. Yeah,
because that's another part of this, and I mean, that's the whole, these whole 2 days, that's what this is about, right? Is that, I have plenty to do. I work with 40 kids in grade 12, I work with 40 kids in grade 11. I work a little bit with the 10s and the 9s, but I have a full-time job. I don't have time to cover classes. I'm not doing any of that.
150 students.
He's really jealous. He doesn't even want to hear about it.
Where
Easy
you
life.
take resumes if you would like to see
Yeah,
them.
no, come to my
That's
school.
fine.
We can get rid of 3 counselors. No problem at all.
But again, it's part of the main.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but no, every person's
Yeah,
position
every
is
school's
different. but
dynamics will be different.
We're fortunate to
I
be in
had,
a.
this past year, I didn't have a single student that stayed back in India. So the whole 106 applied overseas. And we're looking at an average of about 10 applications each. If they did only UK, they did 5. If they did the US, they did 12. So, we sent 106 applications out.
And they have
And
50
two-
each. At their school, 50 each.
Two
So,
counsellors.
yeah, and 2 counsellors.
Yeah.
They've got 40 each and 3 counsellors. None of them are teaching.
And we're working with them from the 9th
No
to the 12th.
comparison at all.
Sometimes we have
Really
6th
envious.
grader that lasts for a meeting and it's, oh God, 6th grade.
We had a kindergarten where he said parent came and asked, I need to do the financial planning, so
Yeah.
he can speak with the school council.
Yeah, exactly.
So like
And
that-
we will meet with anybody. I will meet with the JKT
And this-
parent, that's part of my job, is to
Yes.
make them understand that we have a plan, and whatever else.
But I can remember at the beginning, Tiffany and I, we haven't always, been.
I always wonder what's coming.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. There's been sort of defensive moments, and at the beginning, I'd be asking for information, and it's like, well, can you stop?
She even-
But it was very much. I'm not publicising the school. That's not my job. I'm not marketing the school. That's not my job.
That's not my job,
That's not.
right.
But for me, it's like it's mine, and I don't want to have to keep on asking you for this information. How do I get it? Because my role is marketing and promotions. It's not theirs. Theirs is work with parents and make them feel comfortable. And if they want to come into our school, talk to them. But the information has to be used differently. You had a question.
Just wanted to share something.
Yeah.
From the data front, we are right on the money when we're talking about the data and how important it is for the admissions team to have this information as well. Because as a counselor, you will not be able to meet all the parents. As a deputy principal, the head of the school, the first point of contact is not you, it's the admissions team and the rest from the admissions team. So this data really, really helps
Yeah.
the admission team.
And the board and all of those people. You're exactly
So
right.
also you involve the admissions team
Yeah.
and they understand how to translate the data. That is also very important.
Yeah.
What we communicate, how we interpret the data as an admission team. Really.
Yeah, that's good.
And be able to create something and then send it for. Can you just check that these things are right? Yes, they must be right because we got it out of. For us, we got it out of the platform. And for me, it's like we don't have a discussion. You guys have to have this information in here because when I look at this, I need to know it's right. It's as up to date as possible, and we've invested a lot of time getting it up as up to date as possible. Yes,
How do you
ma'am.
ensure that it's up to date at the end of the academic year when you expect students to update their information?
That's one of the things.
So how do you do it? Because we end up now just calling our parents and students like this.
You have
That's
to
one of the
balance that.
discussions that we had at the end of last year because I'm a little bit OCD. Actually, a lot OCD. And so I like things done, before they even started. And these guys like say, yeah, well, yes, we've got our timeline. Well, it's not my timeline, and so there's a bit of angst there. But one of the things that at this school they did was they've got some things in place that make the kids have to put in their attending university. It's things like at graduation, behind when they get up at graduation, they have a PowerPoint that has their name,
Country,
their country,
college,
and so if the kid wants to graduate, they've got to tell us they're attending. And so the kids.
We call out.
We don't have that.
Now, I'm not saying you have to do that, but that's one of the things that allows you to get the attending information. It may, and we were talking.
We're gonna do it this year, I think, we're gonna do it at graduation rehearsal, and so we have our graduation rehearsal in a room like this, you know, we have lunch and the staff come in to say goodbye and whatever, and we're gonna set up our tables at the door and not let them out.
Until they're fired?
I mean, I'm saying, I know you think I'm kidding, I'm not kidding. That's what we're gonna do.
Your graduation in December, so
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're just going to work out what works for you, but like we're saying to that lady, you've got to get in there and think, okay, how do I get this information without having to do phone calls? There may be a better way.
I like the idea of locking them in the.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's what we're gonna do, and if we're gonna see how mean Gail can be, we might sit Gail.
So one more
She
way,
seems too nice.
one more way of doing it is, you have to submit final reports. If you don't have that attending college, you don't submit the final report. The final report only goes to the attending, yeah, that is only for the, yeah, our majority is the US. So I tend to,
So keep looking for
So
ways to
we're,
be able to
I
type
think,
that
a
up.
little bit
But
like
that
some
is
of you guys
something
where
we
we're not US, so a lot of our kids don't
students don't
find
know
out
that.
until the summer,
They would
right?
think
I
that you
mean,
need to send a
for
final
Indian
report to whichever
universities
college.
or Singapore or whatever, so we have quite a few kids that don't know until the summer.
Your
And I
final
think
report.
that's something that Barry had to figure out, is at his old school, most kids knew by May 1st. At our school, a lot of our kids don't know, so that's why we don't have the data, because they haven't
You'd
heard
think they'd
yet.
have the data, she only has 40 kids.
You didn't get an astrology and
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't get it wrong, we didn't get it
In a
wrong.
very precise search.
That was not my full-time job, it's one of others, but yes, I mean, there's a lot of tears shed over that.
It's time, we've got to get going. Thank you very much for coming. Don't hesitate to email. Thank you.